I'm Stephanie Rozzo. Welcome to Nature Sketch Creates Short-crested Coquette step-by-step painting instructions video. In this video, I'll be showing you how to paint the short-crested coquette using the Nature Sketch Creates step-by-step painting instructions. First, collect all your materials and make sure they're ready to go. Remember, this is just a sketch. Take your time, relax, and don't worry too much if you think you may have made a mistake. Let's get started. Step 1, transfer the image to the watercolor paper. So go ahead and line up the image to the edge of the watercolor paper and just go ahead and tape it. If you're not going to transfer these hole punch lines, you can cover them with the tape, but if you are, you'll want to find another place to put the tape to attach it to the back of the watercolor paper. And then take your graphite transfer paper and place it under your transfer image. It doesn't have to be lined up right, as long as the dark side is facing down and light side is up and it's underneath the lines you're going to be transferring. And just start anywhere to transfer. I like to draw a couple lines, so you're just writing right over them, tracing right over them. And then I like to check them just to make sure I put the paper the right way. So if the transfer paper is the right direction, it's dark side down, not light side down. And I also like to see how dark the lines are transferring. So that looks about right. You'll want to be able to see them while you're painting and at the end as well, so you can redraw them at the last step. So go ahead and go throughout kind of a medium pressure and draw over all those lines. You can put on a podcast, some music, or maybe a audiobook, whatever you like. Just kind of zone out and relax and take your time tracing over all of the lines to transfer the image. Once you have all the lines transferred, or you think you do, go ahead and hold it down to keep the transfer image and the transfer paper in place, and then just flip it up and down to make sure you transfer all those lines. I always end up missing a few. And if I start on one part with my eye and just go down, flipping it up and down, I can usually find them. If you don't find them, it's okay. You can always add them later, but they help. So it's nice to have them there. And this is optional. You can go ahead and transfer the common name and the scientific name. And when you're done, go ahead and remove the graphite transfer paper. This can be reused many times, so I like to set it aside for future use. And remove the tape from the back of the watercolor paper. And then remove it from the transfer image. And you can save this tape if it turns out like this without having too much paper on it. It can be reused. And save your transfer image so you can protect your painting while you're working on it from any hand smudges. And take your kneaded eraser, kind of work it into, or knead it into a light gray spot, and take that and just kind of dab or rub out any smudges that the transfer paper might have left behind. Sometimes graphite transfer paper will leave some smudges. Or you can also use it just to lighten up some lines by dabbing it over your image, or just gently rubbing it over as well. Now that I have my image transferred, I'm going to go ahead and move on to step 2. Step 2, paint in the wettest, lightest Coquette Emerald and Orange. So first, mix the Coquette Emerald, which will require just to take a drop of the 23H sap green. Make sure to shake it up to ensure that all of the paint pigment has been mixed so you get the right concentration of color. Sometimes it tends to settle on the sides. 1 drop of that. Add a little bit of water to it. And we're going to use the wettest, lightest, so I'm just going to take a little bit of that to the side and add more water to it. Dab it onto my towel and then test it on my test paper. That looks like the right color to me, so I'm going to go ahead and fill it in a single layer over the areas in my image in step 2. I feel like it is a little darker when you're putting it on your paper. All you have to do is dab it off onto your towel. Or you could start over if you prefer in the palette by adding a little bit of water to it. I'm just going to add this in a single layer, so starting on one side and then just keep going all the way down. And if you end up having to stop and pick this up again, you could stop here and get back to it another time. You do not have to finish this all at once. You also don't have to add this all in the same spot, so you just want to have it in the same general area as the reference image. It doesn't have to be the same. So I'm just adding it kind of sparingly throughout the breast belly area and the flanks. Throat area as well. Pick up more paint whenever you need it. Make sure to dab it on your towel before applying it to your painting. I like to paint from left to right. Since I'm right-handed, I don't want to smudge the paint. And clean off your brush when you have all the green. And if you missed any spots, you can always go back and add more. And now we're going to mix the Coquette Orange, taking 1 drop of the 26H Chrome Yellow, again mixing it up a little while by shaking it. Taking 1 drop. Adding a little bit of water. Picking it up since we're going to be using the wettest, lightest, and adding some more water to it. This prevents us, by taking some from the original drop into a new spot, makes it so we don't have to add quite as much water to it to get to the right concentration of water to paint. Testing out on my test strip. I might just want a little bit more paint, so I'm just barely dabbing it in there, mixing it in. I'm going to put a little bit too much water, dabbing off my towel, and then testing it again. And that may be hard to see, but that looks a little bit more like the color I'm looking for. Dabbing it off on my towel again after picking it up and adding it. Adding it to the crown and crest first. This area around the eye. And You do not have to stay in the lines. If any paint gets out of the lines, it is totally fine. This is just a sketch, just a fun painting. It does not have to be exact, and it's going to be unique to you. Each time I paint, I find I paint just a little bit different. My painting looks just a little bit different. It still looks like my painting, but it always has a little bit different as far as where the paint ends up. Mostly based on my mood on that given day. Last thing, I'm going to add it to the rump. I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up because I'm going to do a little gradient on that tail band. So adding it in right up to the tail band and then dabbing it off and releasing some water to clean it on my towel. Taking that clean wet brush and over that wet area and just kind of bringing it up to the top of the tail band, adding a nice light gradient. And if it's too much, you can always pull it down too after cleaning your brush off on the towel, and then just applying some water to bring it down. From what I could see, these birds have a little bit of a buff color or orangey color on their tail band here, and it goes from either very white to kind of this darker buff color. So any kind of variation, I think, from what I could tell from the photos, would be accurate, and this is just a sketch, so it doesn't really matter too much. So once you have all of that painted in, go ahead and move on to step 3 after you let this dry. Step 3, paint in the wettest, lightest Coquette bronze. So again, like the others, we're just going to take a drop of the paint, so 33H raw umber, shake it up to make sure the pigment is well mixed and get the right concentration of color. Take 1 drop, add a little bit of water to it with your brush, and then pull it to the side and adding even more water to create that wettest, least concentrated color. Dab it on your towel and then test it out on your test paper. It looks a little light to me, so I'm going to pick up again like we did with the Coquette orange. I'm going to take a little bit of that color, probably too much, just the tip, and add it in to the water area. And that looks good to me. That's the right concentration. It does not have to be exact. Again, it's just a sketch. And go ahead and add it. I like to start on the left to the right, so I start it at the bill and kind of avoid the colors you already added. And if that means you have some white areas, that's fine. So kind of painting around the green and the orange, or the emerald and the orange. And if you paint over it, it's not a big deal, it's totally fine. Just adding it to the throat area. Going to add it to the belly and the branch and under here under the flank. It's going to kind of bring some and then I'm going to take it, put it on the branch and the feet, starting on one side and then working to the other. paint, dabbing it off on my brush, and then I'm going to add it to the feathers on the wing. And I'm going to leave some of that right side, the orange. I'm just kind of painting the left side of the wings, the feathers. And if you paint the whole feather, that's fine. This is your unique image. Lastly, I'm going to add it here to the rump, just the lower part of the rump, not the tail band. And I'm kind of dabbing it in order to leave some of the color that's underneath the orange and the green emerald color. And then I'll clean off my brush. On to step 4 once this dries. Step 4, paint in the wettest, lightest, and driest, darkest Coquette sepia. So again, take 1 drop of the sepia, it's 21H. And just add a tiny bit of water to this because we want it pretty concentrated for part of the step, just so that it's kind of moving without feeling like it has too much of a thick feeling. So when you take it, you put it on, dab it off on your towel and put it on your paper. It should kind of move easily on that paper. If it doesn't, then it probably doesn't have enough water in it. And you pick up a little bit more and add it to another spot with some water to create that wettest, lightest color. Dab it off onto my towel and test that out. Maybe a little bit more like before. I think that looks good. I'm going to take that and I'm going to add it to the belly, rump, tail, wing, and branch. So now it's too concentrated, so I dabbed it off on my towel. Again, I'm just trying to preserve some of the colors underneath, and this might vary. I'm just adding it in kind of a lined motion. And then I'm going to add it to branch. Not the entire branch, just part of the branch like you see in the picture. And step 4, just kind of adding a shadow. Pick up a little bit more paint, dab it on my towel, and I'm going to add it to the wing. Preserve the colors underneath a little bit, and then to the rump as well, preserving a few of those colors. So mostly working in this darker area, but a little bit more. And then you don't really have to clean off your brush. You can pick up a little bit of the darker, driest, darkest sepia and add it to the lower bill. And then just adding it in half circle, kind of following those transfer lines. And it doesn't have to be exact like the image, just kind of following the direction of those transfer lines. And you'll want to make sure to leave some of it blank in between. And make sure not to paint in the orange area. You want to leave those blank. As you can see, it doesn't look exactly like the image. Just kind of filling it in a little bit. Every time I paint, a little bit different. Take a little bit more of this paint and add it to the belly. I'm just going to kind of use lines to add it to these belly feathers. And then on the feet, I'm going to try to preserve a little bit of that color in between the 2 feet. But if not, that's just fine too. Up a little bit more, and I'm going to add it to the wing feathers. It should be dry by this time. If it's not, you can wait a little bit longer. And again, I'm just adding it mostly to that left side of each of the feathers. Preserving some of that color underneath. And then here in the tail as well. Preserving the green and some of that orange color. Picking up a little bit more, and then I'm just going to add it to the side of the rump. Outside edge. It didn't really go on as dark as I would have liked, so I'm going to add just a little bit more to the drier areas. Probably had a little bit too much water in my brush. So just taking one more step to bring it to where I want it to be. Sometimes this happens. I think that's dark enough. Pull up a little bit of the wet light raw umber and add it to this area above the eye. Then cleaned my brush off and picked up the very dark sepia. And you can do this with the pen, and I did do it mostly with the graphite transfer, or you can do it with the sepia. So I did use the graphite in step 4A, and that made it a little bit easier to follow. And then I added the sepia and 4B to the eye there. Once you have all of that added, go ahead and let it dry and move on to step 5. Step 5, paint in the driest, darkest Coquette cinnamon. So first, mix the Coquette cinnamon by taking 1 drop of the 15H permanent red. Finally doing some color mixing here. 1 drop. 1 drop of the 33H raw umber. And 1 drop of the 26H chrome yellow. Go ahead and add a little bit of water from your brush and mix it up. dab it off onto your towel and test it on your test paper. And then you're going to add it to, dabbing off my towel after picking it up, I'm going to add it to the crown crest using line strokes. Let's start here at the bill and move up, preserving some of that color, the orange color underneath. This does not have to be exact, this is approximate, just like everything else. Just putting the color in the same general area. Where it actually ends up can be completely different. And as you can see, mine is different from the reference image as well. And then I'm going to add it here to the cheek tufts, preserving some of that orange color underneath. So I just kind of dabbed it in there. And then I'm going to add it to the belly, like you see in the reference image. And that'll most likely be near some of the light areas, but it doesn't really matter. Just kind of add it in. And I'm going to add it to the rump as well. And to the tail. Then I'm going to let this dry and move on to step 6. Step 6, paint in driest, darkest coquette green. So take a drop of the 23H sap green and 1 drop of the 21H sepia. And add a little bit of water. Dab it off on your towel and test it out. Looks like the same color to me. Pick up a little bit more, dab it on the towel, and then you're going to add it in half circle shapes like you did on the throat area, following the direction of the transfer lines. And also just refer to your reference image, both the one in your step-by-step and your final reference image will be helpful as well, I'm sure. If it's too dark, just dab it off on your towel. And again, it doesn't need to be in the same spot, just the same basic area. Those transfer lines are a guide, they are not an absolute. This is your sketch. And once you're done, go ahead and clean off your brush, let this dry, and move on to step 7. Step 7, add ink lines. First, use the 005 black micron. It's a very fine tip to redraw all the lines. This helps so that if you need to redefine where the lines should be because of paint being outside the original lines, or you've decided you want to change it a little bit from the transfer image lines, you can do that with this pen. And then if you need to correct anything you did with this pen, you can correct it with a thicker line, kind of like how we worked with the watercolor from lightest to darker. So go ahead and just go throughout and redraw those lines. Once you've redrawn those lines, and if you didn't draw any and you need to go back later, you can always go back with any of the pens. If you transfer the common name and the scientific name, go ahead and redraw them right now. When you're done with the black 05 micron, go ahead and move on to the black 01 micron. And you'll want to just use this to redraw the left and right outline of the bird, just to add a subtle darker line in those areas. Again, you can go back and add more of any of the pen lines if you like later on. And then we'll also go ahead and write in the scientific name again. And lastly, I'm going to add some lines throughout using the black 08 micron. Use it for the eye, the bill, the tail, the wing, the feet, the orange tufts, and the branch, and anywhere else that you feel you might like to have some thicker lines in your image. And so I don't want anything to smudge, so I'm using my transfer image to help me out here, and I'm referring to my final reference image for line placement and my step-by-step as well. I'm just going to go ahead and add some thicker lines, and I'm going to outline the outside of the eye and then kind of fill in this lower 3/4, trying to preserve some of that white. I didn't do such a great job doing that this time. It's a little less white reflecting off the eye than I would have liked, but I still love the image, so it's great. Doesn't matter, it's a perfectly imperfect mistake. Go ahead and fill in the common name if you transferred that with this darker pen. If you like, you can add more ink and more watercolor in separate layers. Just make sure you let everything dry between layers so it doesn't smear and smudge. Once it's dry, it won't have any issues with that. And now we're done. Great job. You have created a painting that's unique to you. Next, you have some options of what you can do with this. You can punch holes in it and add it to your sketchbook, gift it, frame it. Also, make sure to add it to our Facebook fan art page. Thank you for joining me. I hope you had fun and had a chance to relax a little. If you like this video, please click the like button and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Check out the Nature Sketch Crate website to sign up for our newsletter for regular updates and also to purchase future crates.